What's up, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and I have a book that I want to talk to you about. This is X-Men Storm, written by Warren Ellis and drawn by Terry Dodson. This was a miniseries in 1996, and I recently got this a couple months ago, and I only just now got around to reading it. And I should go ahead and mention, I am a huge fan of Storm. In fact, out of all of the main X-Men characters, she's my favorite X-Man. I really came to like her when I was reading through Chris Claremont's run on Uncanny X-Men. She definitely kind of shined, I guess I should say, as in my opinion, she really clearly seems to be one of Claremont's favorite characters, because throughout his entire run, she doesn't really ever go away. She's always kind of present there, and I came to like her a lot reading that run. And so when I saw a while back that this was being solicited as coming out, of course this happened in 1996, but the trade paperback only very recently was put out, I was like, woohoo, a Storm miniseries, I love Storm. And then I saw that Warren Ellis was writing it, and I was like, oh no, because Warren Ellis, he's a pretty good writer most of the time when he wants to be. I mean, if you were just watching this channel, you wouldn't know that, because he wrote Avengers Endless Wartime, which was awful. And then he's also written some stuff that I also did not care for, such as Wolverine Not Dead Yet. That was a storyline around the same time that was in the main Wolverine title, and I really didn't like that story very much. And he also had a somewhat lengthy run on Astonishing X-Men. It was, I think, 2 storylines and then a miniseries that he did later on. And a lot of stuff that he did in that run I really didn't care for either. And so I was looking at this and I was thinking, this probably isn't going to be very good. And maybe it's just that I had really low expectations, but this is probably the best X-Men thing that Warren Ellis has ever written. I haven't read a lot of his Excalibur stuff, where he introduced Pete Wisdom into Excalibur. I read some of that stuff when I first started reading comics like 15 years ago, but it's been a very long time since I've read any of that, so maybe I should hold off on making that statement that this is the best X-Men thing that Warren Ellis wrote, but this is definitely better than his Wolverine Not Dead Yet, and in my opinion, it's even better than his Astonishing X-Men. I think that this is a pretty good character study for Storm. It does have some problems that I'll go ahead and get into, but first let me go ahead and quickly tell you the plot of this story. Basically, before this story, in the main X-Men title, one of the main X-Men titles, I don't know which one, Storm was fighting one of the Morlocks, or actually, she was a member of a terrorist organization called Gene Nation, and Gene Nation, they were a spin-off of the Morlocks, and this particular character, Marrow, was the leader, and basically, as I understand it, she was just evil to the core, and Storm was fighting her, and basically, she felt like she had no choice, she had to kill Marrow, and so she ripped out Marrow's heart, and then in this story, basically, she feels like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe there's some other action that I could have taken, and so she's really facing a lot of self-doubt in this miniseries, and basically, the plot, what little there is that she gets taken to this alternate dimension where the members of Gene Nation grew up and were trained, and she has to kind of figure out what's going on, and that's basically it. As you may have guessed when I said what little there is of the plot, this is a 4-issue miniseries, but it feels like maybe 2 issues of plot. There's really not a whole lot that goes on here at all. Issue 1, basically the entire issue sets up that Storm is facing a lot of self-doubt right now, and then at the very end of that issue, she gets teleported to this alternate dimension called the Hill, and like I said, that was this place where a lot of these Morlocks, they were children, they were taken to this alternate dimension, and it was basically this really harsh reality where they kind of were hardened and became really tough, aggressive warriors, and time passed differently in the Hill, so that when they came back just a few months later, they were all adults, and they were ready to destroy humanity or whatever. And basically, Mikhail Rasputin, who is Peter Rasputin, Colossus, his older brother, he is like their leader at the Hill, and he was kind of the one who was training them and teaching them to become hardened warriors. And basically, for some unknown reason, Mikhail Rasputin wants Storm to be his queen. And this story does make one of those, once again, this is a story where a villain is kind of in love with Storm, and he's like, hey, I want you to be my wife. And I hate it when that happens. That's happened like 5 times. It happened once with Loki. It happened once with Doctor Doom, who we later found out was a Doombot. It happened here. It happened once in Chris Claremont's Extreme X-Men in the 2000s. It happens all the time, and frankly, it's a little annoying every time you've got a big villain who has fallen in love with Storm. It happened once with Dracula in the 1980s. It happens a lot, where you've got these villains who, just because Storm, I guess, is this really awesome character, all of these villains are just instantly stricken with love and they just want to be with her. And it doesn't really work, ever. I don't ever think that it's really a good story, especially here. We don't really know why Mikhail Rasputin wants Storm to be the mother to the Morlocks. Especially, we find out later in the story that Callisto was already the mother to the Morlocks, and for some reason, he wants Storm to be the mother now. It doesn't make any sense. I guess you could say, well, Mikhail is crazy, so he doesn't have to have motivations that make sense, I guess, but still it feels a little cliche that for no real reason at all, he kidnapped Storm just so that this story could happen. And basically, once she is taken to the Hill, and like I said, very little plot in this series. Issue 1, you have she's facing self-doubt, and then she's taken to the Hill. Issue 2, she's in the Hill, and then she meets Mikhail Rasputin. Issue 3, she finds out that Gene Nation is planning to plant a bomb on Earth, and it's going to destroy a government building. Issue 4, she takes care of it. Not a whole lot happens here. And then, while all this is going on, you have Cable, who is living at the X-Mansion at this time, and he basically is the only one who thinks that Storm is dead, and he's having a lot of trouble coming to grips with that, which I found to be a very strange situation, because this book goes out of its way to mention that Cable is a warrior from the future. He has actually fought in wars, and he has lost soldiers, and he was able to mourn their deaths, but for some reason, he's unable to let go of the fact that Storm is now dead. And I don't think that works very well either. This book claims that the reason that he's unable to mourn her death is because he didn't know her very well. I don't really think that works very well. Cable is not a character who's going to have trouble sleeping at night because a character that he didn't know very well is dead. I don't really think that he's that kind of character, so this book does kind of mishandle Cable a little bit. But you may be wondering, why did I like this book so much when it sounds like I really didn't like it? The plot is virtually non-existent. There's very little plot here, but the character of Storm is handled very well. I really like the way he kind of reaffirms that Storm is awesome, and there's a reason that she's awesome, and he shows why she's awesome at the end of this story. But occasionally she's going to have very human moments of doubt, and I thought that worked very well. Some things I did not like about this. I mentioned yesterday in my review of Wolverine and the X-Men Alpha and Omega, I mentioned that miniseries was just a side story that did not really have any huge ramifications on the main titles. And I said it was good that it did that. I did not want it to be this big story that had ramifications on the Marvel Universe. This is a miniseries, a 4-issue miniseries that kind of sort of has these ramifications on the main title, or at least it implies that it's going to have these ramifications, because at the very end of the miniseries, Storm, she's gone through a sort of crucible, and now she's like, I'm going to wear a costume that's different. I'm not going to wear this old costume that you see on the cover. I'm going to wear a slightly more revealing costume, and it's going to get people's attention. She actually says that. She says, I wanted to wear something that would get more attention. And I don't really understand why this... I mean, a costume change is not a huge pivotal moment in a character's life, but if I was just reading Uncanny X-Men and Adjectiveless X-Men, and suddenly Storm is wearing a brand new costume, and I can just imagine that a footnote at the bottom of the page would say, go check out Storm's miniseries to see why she's wearing a new costume. I would hate that. I would really hate that that this fairly pivotal thing that happens in this character's life is happening almost off-screen, not on the main title. I don't mind if you want to do a 4-issue miniseries that kind of focuses on this character and really shows us what she's about, especially when in the main titles you've got like 10 or 12 other characters that you really need to focus on. So for 4 months, if you want to take her aside and focus on her in her own miniseries, that's fine. But I really don't like when in this 4-issue miniseries, we are led to believe that this is a huge, major story because there's all this stuff that's going to be coming back into play in the main X-Men titles. For example, Callisto comes back to the main Marvel Universe. She was also stranded in a hill, and then, spoiler alert, she meets Marrow, who we thought was dead. And this whole miniseries is kind of built on the fact that Storm thought that Marrow was dead, and that's why she is facing these self-doubts. And then, if you were reading the main Uncanny X-Men title and Adjectiveless X-Men, and you thought that Marrow was dead, and then suddenly she shows up again, that would be a little frustrating if you didn't know, hey, she came back kind of in one panel in that Storm miniseries. And then also, we find out at the end of this miniseries that Mikhail Rasputin was actually working for the Dark Beast from the Age of Apocalypse. I don't know how that works. Mikhail Rasputin is a character I don't really know a whole lot about, and I don't see him especially as a character who would be taking orders. He seems like a hardened military type who is a firm leader, and he doesn't really seem like someone who'd be taking orders from the Dark Beast. And again, that's another thing that we find out here, and I don't know, I'm assuming we found out elsewhere that this had happened, but the Dark Beast had actually infiltrated the X-Men and is pretending to be the normal Beast. And again, he kind of vows revenge against Storm and Mikhail Rasputin at the end of this miniseries, and I'm assuming that gets picked up somewhere else. I would be really angry if I was reading the Uncanny X-Men title and suddenly Dark Beast comes after Storm and he says, I'm getting revenge for that thing that you did in your miniseries. I don't like that this is a miniseries that at first you're thinking this is just a chance to kind of explore Storm's character, but then you find out it's kind of very important to the plot of the main X-Men titles. I don't really like that. That's something that bothers me. I'm sure it doesn't bother other people as much though. And that's about all I have to say. The art is really good here. I've always liked Terry Dotson's art, and other than that, I don't have a whole lot to say. Not a whole lot happens here. The main reason that I like it is because it does a really good job of exploring the character of Storm. And also, like I said, I probably had significantly lower expectations because this was written by Warren Ellis, and he's not really the best person to write X-Men stuff ever. So I was not expecting a whole lot, and the fact that this does a decent job of writing Storm, I think that kind of made me like it a lot more. But a lot of this other stuff, like Cable being mishandled and all of these main plot points that really should be addressed in the main X-Men title being set up here, that really bothered me. But other than that, I enjoyed this book. So if you are a really big Storm fan, I would recommend that you read this story. Otherwise, I would say you could probably give it a skip, especially since this story is like 20 years old and you probably don't have to read it if you're not just an X fanatic like I am and you're trying to hunt down every X-Men story ever. But really, I would say if you're a huge X-Men fan, go ahead and read it, or specifically if you're a huge Storm fan, go ahead and read it. And that's all I had to say about this book. I hope that you guys had a great time watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will be back sometime later this week with another video. So until then, I'll see you guys in the future. Have a great day.